The clock glowed 1:07 a.m. when my phone buzzed against the nightstand, blue light cutting through the darkness like a knife. I reached for it groggily, expecting maybe an emergency or a wrong number, but instead there were just 7 words from my wife Caroline. "Don't wait for me tonight, Darrell." No explanation, no context, just that cold little sentence floating on my screen like ice in a glass. I sat up in bed, the sheets tangled around my waist, and read it again, thinking maybe I'd misunderstood through the fog of interrupted sleep. But no, it was clear as daylight. "Don't wait for me tonight." I glanced at the empty space beside me where she should have been, where she'd been sleeping less and less lately, always some excuse about late meetings or girls' nights or yoga classes that apparently ran until dawn. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, a dozen responses forming and dissolving in my mind, but then I stopped. Something in me just stopped. I set the phone down, threw the covers back, and walked to the closet where I pulled on jeans and a black Henley, the kind Caroline used to say made my shoulders look good back when she still noticed things like that. I wasn't angry yet, not the hot burning kind anyway, just cold and clear, like someone had finally turned on the lights in a room I'd been stumbling through in the dark for months. I grabbed my keys, my wallet, and headed downstairs where the house sat quiet and still, full of all the things we'd bought together thinking they meant forever. The wedding photos on the mantel, the couch we'd argued over at 3 different furniture stores, the coffee maker she'd insisted we needed even though I told her a French press worked just fine. All of it just objects now, props in a play where one of the actors had stopped showing up. I pulled out my phone and texted my buddy Devin. "You still up?" 3 dots appeared immediately. "Yeah man, what's going on? You at Harlow's?" I asked, nomming the downtown lounge where he bartended on weekends. "Just closed, but I'm here for another hour doing inventory." "Why?" On my way I typed and headed for the door. The drive downtown took 15 minutes through empty streets slick with recent rain, streetlights reflecting in pools of water like fallen stars. I parked in the lot behind Harlow's and walked around to the front where Devin was wiping down the bar, his tall frame bent over the polished wood. He looked up when the door chimed, his dark eyes narrowing with concern when he saw my face. "What happened?" he asked, setting down the rag. "Caroline texted me at 1 in the morning," I said, sliding onto a bar stool, "told me not to wait up." Devin's jaw tight. He'd never liked Caroline much, thought she was too high maintenance, too concerned with appearances, but he'd kept his opinions mostly to himself out of respect for me. "Where is she?" "I don't know," I said, "and that's the problem." He poured 2 fingers of bourbon into a glass and slid it across to me. "You think she's cheating?" I took a drink, letting the burn settle in my chest. "I think she's been gone for a while and I'm just now noticing." We sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the soft jizz playing through the speakers and the distant hum of the refrigerators behind the bar. Then Devin's phone buzzed and he glanced at it, a slow smile spreading across his face. "What?" I asked. "My sister Sienna just texted. She's downtown at some art thing and asking if I want to grab late food. You remember Sienna, right?" I nodded. Tall, sharp wit, worked in graphic design. I'd met her a handful of times at Devin's barbecues and always thought she had the kind of energy that filled a room without trying. "Yeah, I remember. She's 2 blocks away," Devin said, already texting back. "I'm telling her to come here." 10 minutes later the door opened and Sienna walked in, all long legs and confident stride, wearing a leather jacket over a simple black dress, her natural hair pulled back in a way that showed off her face, sharp cheekbones and eyes that didn't miss much. She spotted me and raised an eyebrow. "Darrell, this is a surprise," she said, her voice carrying that slight rasp that came from too much laughing and not enough sleep. "Didn't expect to see you out at this hour." "Life's full of surprises," I said, raising my glass. She slid onto the stool next to me, close enough that I could smell her perfume, something warm and woodsy. "Devin caught me up," she said, glancing at her brother. "Wife trouble? Something like that." Sienna ordered a gin and tonic and we talked, not about Caroline at first, just about nothing and everything, the kind of easy conversation that happens when nobody's performing. She told me about a client who wanted a logo that looked like a disco ball mixed with a law firm. I told her about the restoration project I was working on, a 1967 Mustang that was more rust than metal at this point. Devin eventually excused himself to the back to finish inventory, and it was just the 2 of us in that dim bar with the music playing soft and the city asleep outside. "You're not happy," Sienna said suddenly, not a question but a statement. I looked at her. "That obvious? You're sitting in a bar at 2 in the morning drinking bourbon while your wife is God knows where, so yeah, pretty obvious." I smiled despite myself. "Fair point." She leaned back, studying me with those sharp eyes. "What are you going to do about it?" I pulled out my phone, looked at Caroline's message again, and something in me shifted. Something reckless and tired and done with being the one who always waited. "I'm going to stop waiting," I said, and then I did something I probably shouldn't have. I turned to Sienna. Can I take a photo with you? She tilted her head, curious but game. Sure, why? Because I'm done being invisible. She understood immediately, a slow smile crossing her face as she leaned in close, her shoulder against mine, her head tilted just slightly so our faces were near but not touching, easy and comfortable like we'd done this 100 times. I held up the phone, snapped the photo, and there it was, the two of us looking like exactly what Caroline would assume we were. I opened my messages, attached the photo, and typed under Caroline's text, "Don't worry, nobody's waiting." Then I hit send. Sienna watched me do it and let out a low whistle. "You're playing with fire." "Maybe," I said, "but I'm tired of sitting in the cold." We stayed another hour talking and laughing, and somewhere in there I realized I hadn't felt this scene in months, maybe longer. Sienna didn't need me to be anything other than exactly who I was, didn't need me to perform or apologize or shrink myself to make room for her ego. When we finally left, Devon locked up behind us and Sienna walked me to my car, hands in her jacket pockets. "Thanks for tonight," I said. "For what?" "For reminding me what it feels like to be treated like a person." She smiled, soft and real. "Anytime, Daryl." I drove home through the empty streets, and when I pulled into the driveway, Caroline's car was already there, headlights off, engine silent. I walked inside and found her standing in the living room, still in her coat, phone clutched in her hand, eyes blazing. "Are you serious right now, Daryl?" she said, voice sharp and high. I set my keys down calmly. "About what?" "Don't play games," she snapped, holding up her phone with my message on the screen. "Who is she, a friend?" Caroline's laugh was bitter. "A friend, right? Because that's what it looks like." "You want to talk?" I said, keeping my voice level. "You texted me at 1 in the morning telling me not to wait up, no explanation, no courtesy, just an order, so I didn't wait." "That's different," she said, stepping closer. "How?" "Because I was with Tessa and Morgan at Tessa's place, we were talking, I lost track of time." I nodded slowly. "And you couldn't text me that? You couldn't say, 'Hey babe, staying late with the girls, see you tomorrow'? You had to make it sound like I was some burden you needed to dismiss." She blinked, thrown off. "I didn't mean it like that." "Then how did you mean it, Caroline?" "Because from where I'm standing it felt exactly like what it's felt like for the last 6 months, like I'm an afterthought in your life." Her face shifted, anger mixing with something else, maybe guilt, maybe defensiveness. "I've been busy, Darrell, you know that." "Busy," I repeated. "Right, too busy to have dinner together more than once a week. Too busy to ask about my day. Too busy to even sleep in the same bed half the time, but not too busy to go out with your friends whenever they call. That's not fair." "Isn't it?" I asked, and my voice was quiet now, the kind of quiet that's worse than yelling. "When's the last time you asked me how I was doing, really asked, not just as a formality while you're scrolling through Instagram?" She opened her mouth, closed it, looked away. "Exactly," I said. "So yeah, I went out tonight, I had a drink with a friend, I took a photo, and I sent it to you because I wanted you to feel 1 ounce of what I've been feeling every time you cancel plans or come home late or look at me like I'm furniture." Caroline's eyes filled with tears, but they felt performative, like she was trying to find the reaction that would get her what she wanted. "You're trying to hurt me." "No," I said, "I'm trying to stop hurting myself." The silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. Finally she turned away, wiping at her eyes. "I can't do this right now," she said. "Then don't," I replied and walked past her up the stairs. I slept in the guest room that night, door closed, phone on silent, and for the first time in months I didn't lie awake wondering where I went wrong. 3 days later, Caroline barely spoke to me, moving through the house like a ghost, all tight smiles and clipped words when she had to acknowledge me at all. I didn't chase her, didn't apologize, just went about my life. I went to work at the custom car shop I co-owned, spent my evenings in the garage working on the Mustang, met Devon and Sienna for dinner on Thursday at a Thai place downtown where we laughed so hard the table next to us gave us dirty looks. Sienna and I had become something like real friends in those few days, texting about random things, sending memes, having actual conversations about life and dreams and the things that kept us up at night. There was no romance in it, at least not yet, just the ease of two people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company without games or expectations. On Friday night, I was in the garage, hands covered in grease, when Caroline appeared in the doorway wearing the blue dress I'd bought her for her birthday last year. "We need to talk," she said. I wiped my hands on a rag. "Okay." She stepped into the garage, arms crossed. "I've been thinking about what you said about me not being present, and maybe you have a point, maybe I have been distracted." "Maybe," I repeated. She bristled. "I'm trying here, Darrell." "Are you?" I asked, setting down the wrench I'd been holding. "Because it sounds like you're trying to smooth things over without actually changing anything." "That's not true," she insisted. "I want to fix this." "Then tell me where you were that night," I said. "Really tell me, not some vague story about Tessa's place, the truth." Her face went pale. "I told you, Caroline," I said, and I felt so tired suddenly, tired of the lies and the half-truths and the constant feeling that I was fighting for something she'd already given up on. "I'm not stupid. I know you weren't just talking with your friends until 1 in the morning, so either tell me the truth or don't, but stop insulting my intelligence." She looked at me for a long moment, and I saw the exact second she decided to double down instead of come clean. "You're paranoid," she said. "Ever since that night you've been looking for reasons to make me the villain." I nodded slowly. "Okay, that's it, just okay. What do you want me to say, Caroline? You're standing here lying to my face and expecting me to just accept it because what? Because we're married. Marriage is supposed to mean something. It is, I agreed, it's supposed to mean partnership and honesty and showing up for each other, but I've been the only one doing that for a long time now." She turned on her heel. "I'm going out." "Where does it matter?" she shot back. "You'll just assume the worst anyway." And she left, heels clicking across the concrete, car starting up a moment later, tires crunching on gravel as she pulled away. I stood there in the garage surrounded by tools and parts in the skeletal frame of a car I was trying to bring back to life, and I realized I couldn't do the same for my marriage because you can't restore something when half the parts are missing. That weekend, I made a decision. Monday morning, I called a lawyer, a woman named Patricia Wang who came highly recommended and had a reputation for being fair but fierce. I sat in her office with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city and told her everything: the distance, the lies, the feeling that I was married to a stranger. She listened without judgment, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. "Do you want to try counseling first?" she asked. I thought about it, really thought about it. "No," I said. "I've tried talking, I've tried waiting, I've tried being patient, I'm done trying alone." She nodded. "Let's talk about assets." Here's where it got interesting: the house we lived in, the beautiful 3-bedroom craftsman with the renovated kitchen and the garden Caroline loved to photograph for Instagram, that was mine, purchased with inheritance money from my grandfather 2 years before I even met Caroline. The title was solely in my name. The car she drove, a sleek Audi Q5 she treated like her baby, that was mine too, bought outright with money from a restoration project I'd completed, title in my name, she was just on the insurance. Our savings account, the one with about $93,000 in it, solely my name, funded entirely by my income from the shop, while Caroline's money from her social media consulting went into her own account that I'd never had access to. Patricia raised her eyebrows. "This is fairly straightforward then," she said. "In this state, anything owned before the marriage or inherited remains separate property unless it was commingled, and from what you're telling me, you kept everything quite separate." I hadn't done it on purpose, hadn't been planning an exit, it was just how things had shaken out. "Did she contribute to the household?" Patricia asked. "I paid the mortgage, utilities, insurance, groceries, basically everything," I said. "She bought her own clothes and paid for her business expenses, but the household itself, that was all me." Patricia made another note. "This will be very clean," she said. "Likely uncontested. If she has any sense, you're not asking for anything from her and she has no legal claim to your assets." "File the papers," I said. 2 weeks later, Caroline was served at the house while I was at work. I know because she called me 17 times in a row, then texted a stream of messages that devolved from shock to anger to disbelief. When I got home that evening, she was sitting at the kitchen table, papers spread in front of her, eyes red. "You're really doing this?" she said, voice hollow. "Yes." She looked up at me. "Just like that, 8 years together and you're just done." I sat down across from her. "I've been done for a while, Caroline. I was just waiting for you to notice." "The divorce papers say you're keeping everything," she said. "The house, the car, the savings." "That's because it's all mine," I said gently. "I'm not trying to be cruel, it's just fact." She let out a choked laugh. "So what, I'm just supposed to walk away with nothing?" "You'll walk away with your own savings, your business, your freedom," I said. "That's not nothing." "This is insane," she said, standing up abruptly. "You can't just decide our marriage is over because I've been busy." "It's not about busy," I said. "It's about respect and honesty and partnership, and we haven't had any of those things in a long time." She stared at me and I saw her cycling through emotions, trying to land on the one that would change my mind. "I made mistakes," she said finally, "but we can fix this, we can go to therapy, I'll be better." "Caroline," I said quietly, "where were you that night?" "What? That night you texted me at 1 a.m., where were you really?" She went very still. "I told you." "No, you didn't, and that's the problem. Even now, even with divorce papers on the table, you still can't tell me the truth." Her face crumpled. "It was one time, Darryl, it didn't mean anything." There it was, the confession I'd known was coming but still hit like a punch to the gut. "Who does it matter?" "Yes," she wiped her eyes. "Someone from a networking event. We've been talking for a few weeks. It was stupid. It's over now." I nodded, feeling numb. "Okay, that's it," she asked. "Just okay. What do you want me to do?" Caroline, scream and throw things. "I'm too tired for that. I'm just tired." She reached for my hand across the table, but I pulled back. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know," I said, and I stood up. "I'm staying at Devon's for a while. You can have the house until you figure things out, but I need you out by the end of the month." "Darryl, please." "End of the month, Caroline." I packed a bag and left, and I didn't look back. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later, quick and clean, just like Patricia predicted. Caroline tried to fight for the Audi at least, but her lawyer took one look at the title and advised her to let it go. In the end, she walked away with her business, her personal account which had about 19,000 in it, and whatever furniture she wanted from the house. I kept everything else not out of spite but because it was legally and factually mine. The day the papers were signed, I felt lighter than I had in years. Devin and Sienna took me out to celebrate, not the end of my marriage exactly, but the beginning of whatever came next. We went to Harlow's where it had all started, sat at the same bar, drank the same bourbon. To new chapters, Devin said, raising his glass. To people who show up, I added, and we drank. Sienna smiled at me from across the bar, and something passed between us, not a promise but a possibility, and that felt like enough. 2 months later, Caroline texted me out of nowhere. I need help, it said. I stared at the message for a long time, then called instead of texting. What's going on? I asked when she picked up. She sounded small, defeated. I lost my apartment, she said. Rent went up and I couldn't cover it. I've been staying with friends, but that's falling apart. I didn't know who else to call. What do you need? A loan, she said quietly. Just enough for first and last month on a new place. I'll pay you back, I promise. I closed my eyes. How much? 4,000. I thought about saying no, about letting her figure it out on her own the way I'd had to figure out so many things alone. But then I thought about who I wanted to be, not for her but for myself. I'll transfer it today, I said. Darryl, she breathed. Thank you, I don't, I interrupted. This isn't about us, this is me helping someone who's struggling, that's it. Okay, she said. Are you? She started. Are you seeing anyone? That's not your business anymore, Caroline. Right, she said. Sorry. Take care of yourself, I said and hung up. I transferred the money that afternoon and blocked her number, not out of anger but out of necessity, because I knew if I didn't she'd keep reaching out and I'd keep answering and neither of us would ever really move on. 3 weeks later there was a knock on my door. I'd moved into a loft downtown, all exposed brick and big windows, a space that felt like mine in a way the house never fully had. When I opened the door, Caroline stood there holding an envelope. I told you I blocked your number, I said. I know, she replied. I came to give you this. She held out the envelope and I took it, opened it. Inside was a check for $4,000 and a handwritten note on simple white paper. Darryl, thank you for helping me when you didn't have to. I've been doing a lot of thinking and I realize now how much I took you for granted, how much I blamed you for problems I created. You deserve better than what I gave you and I'm sorry, truly sorry, not because I want you back but because you deserve to hear it. I hope you're happy. I hope you find someone who sees you the way you deserve to be seen all along. Caroline. I read it twice, then looked up at her standing in my doorway looking smaller somehow, humbled by life in a way that felt real. Thank you for this, I said. She nodded. I mean it, Darryl, every word. I know, I said, and I did. Take care, Caroline, you too. She turned and walked away and I closed the door quietly, not with anger or bitterness. Just with the calm certainty that some chapters end exactly when they're supposed to. That evening, Sienna came over with takeout, and we sat on my couch eating pad thai and watching some documentary about ocean life, her feet tucked under her, my arms stretched across the back of the couch, not quite touching but close enough to feel the warmth. She came back, Sienna said, not a question. Yeah, and nothing, I said. She apologized, she returned the money, and that's it. Sienna looked at me with those sharp eyes that always saw more than I said. You're really okay. I am, I said, and I meant it. For the first time in years, I meant it completely. She smiled and leaned her head on my shoulder, and we sat there in comfortable silence while blue light from the television flickered across the walls and the city hummed outside my windows, full of possibility and new beginnings, and all the things that come after you finally stop waiting for someone to choose you and choose yourself instead. If this story meant something to you, you're going to love what's coming next. Click that video right there for another story about someone who chose consequences over silence. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. I post new stories every week. Hit that bell so you never miss one. I'll see you in the next one.